Hi everyone. Anthony Love Tano here, the internet's busiest music nerd, and it's time for a review of this new LL Cool J album, The Force. Here we have the first full-length album in 11 whole years from legendary Queens rapper, songwriter, and actor Mr. LL Cool J. It's his 14th album and I guess has been released under his own name, like on his own label in tandem with Def Jam Records. And LL Cool J is somebody who I have not reviewed his music yet on this channel, so I mean, I guess we should really talk about why that is, despite the fact that he is such a significant figure in the history of hip-hop music. But yeah, for a time I feel like LL could easily be categorized as one of these artists who on some level is still around and active, but more or less he has kind of retired into some version of music industry veteran status, and the roles and parts that he plays in the entertainment industry more broadly have kind of overshadowed his current day musical output. You know, much in the same way that like a lot of people know Ice-T these days, not for being a formative West Coast hip-hop figure, but you know, like one of the key detectives on Law & Order, SVU. He's still tearing it apart in body count though, so shout out to him. However, in regards to LL though, make no mistake, no matter how far in the past his heyday is, his impact on hip-hop as a whole is massive, cannot be overstated, and to some degree is still felt today. I mean, he was one of the genre's earliest big commercial successes, which he achieved through his massive voice and energy, his endless charisma, and style too. Eagle-eyed fans will notice that on the cover of this record, he's wearing the Kangol. And while maybe some of his earliest releases have not held the same kind of long-term critical acclaim that records from Eric B. and Rakim or the Beastie Boys or EPMD have, records like Radio and Bad are still hyper essential inclusions to hip-hop's early blueprint and brought countless new eyes and ears to the genre, which LL achieved without compromising the genre's artistic integrity or very black and very New York roots. Now, truth be told though, LL's career past this point, artistically and commercially, took a lot of twists and turns. Don't call it a comeback. There was the second wind that he got off of the album he dropped just at the start of the 1990s, Mama Said Knock You Out, where he was flirting with a lot of kind of new school hardcore hip-hop sounds at the time. The track Murdergram DEUX off of this new record actually calls back to a track on that album. Past the early 90s though, LL made numerous attempts at continuing his commercial success that were not quite as fruitful. He went into acting too, had a very weird and controversial beef with battle rapper Cannabis, flirted with R&B a little bit as well. You know, there's a reason you could say he's been kind of musically MIA for the past decade. However, all of that seems kind of irrelevant in the face of this new LP here, The Force, where the whole point seems to be to celebrate the past and for LL to get back in touch with what made him great artistically to begin with. However, I will say, while The Force's vibes and aesthetics do read as nostalgic and kind of old school, at the same time, I don't really feel like this album is that much of a throwback, because there's not really an LL Cool J album in his past catalog that sounds like this. Like, much of the time, the energy on this LP is not as hardcore or over-the-top aggressive as Mama Said Knock You Out, and LL is also not really bringing back that rudimentary, bombastic, and sometimes rock-centric production that guys like Rick Rubin were known for back in the 80s, as the vast majority of the beats on this album are crafted on some level by the one and only Q-Tip of A Tribe Called Quest fame, which gives a lot of cuts on The Force a kind of old-school boom bap, jazz rap, soul soul chop kind of flavor to it, which for LL still reads as kind of new because this was never really a sound in the early stages of his career that he was associated with. The super Afrocentric native tongues hip-hop movement that Q-Tip was known to be a pretty big figurehead in. Also on top of that, I feel like Q-Tip, being an artist, throws in a lot of weird and experimental ideas when it comes to the B side of this thing. Cool synth work, very weird effect palettes. So case in point, this album is not just simply LL rapping over a bunch of like throwback jazz rap beats or a group of instrumentals that sound like something off of Low End Theory. Like with the eerie synths and rhythm sequences all over the opening track, Spirit of Cyrus, which has a bit of a Snoop Dogg refrain on it that works really well. And all of this kind of sets the stage for LL to lyrically explore themes of police brutality and lawlessness. And he does a great job of painting a personal picture of all of this, despite the fact that like he's not typically known specifically for his social commentary in a lot of his music. From here through the first leg of the record, he continues to carry the torch for rap's original spirit, like with the big vocals and bad boy energy on the title track of the album, where Q-Tip's buzzing and slick synth layers as well as galloping hi-hats make for a sick groove. There's also Saturday Night Special, where LL lyrically goes above and beyond to kind of paint this character portrait of a hustler who you don't want to cross, somebody who's going to enact revenge on you at a moment of insecurity. And Rick Ross comes through lyrically to sort of play into this role a little bit and further add details to this image. Next on the album, LL gives us what is essentially a lyrical celebration of blackness, of African American culture, through his own perspectives on it on Black Code Suite, where he kind of employs a lot of nods and mentions to things like music, everyday life and experiences, and food. After this, though, I think the midpoint of the record becomes kind of a mixed bag. Q-Tip starts dishing out these very weak, forgettable filler choruses, namely on the song Passion. LL also drops some opening bars on this track that kind of reminds you of why exactly he wasn't taken as seriously out of the gate back in the day as artists like Chuck D or KRS-One. Y'all need a new team like a girl with a BBL needs new jeans. It's in my DNA to let him play with the enclave, percolate while songs play. Then after this, we get what I think is the roughest track here with Saweetie. That would be Proclivities, which is this slick and flirty jam where LL is just talking a lot of game, making a lot of passes, but it mostly, to my ears anyway, just reads as awkward. Then 30 Decembers kind of reminds me of like tracks we've heard repeatedly as of late from the likes of Nas on his latest records with Hit Boy, where he's like really diving into his past and reframing and recontextualizing a lot of things. And again, LL, just like that, attempts to go over the past several decades of his life and his career and ponder how he's changed, how the world he originally came from has changed, how he feels almost out of place in it to a degree. You know, home is no longer home for him anymore in a way. But with that being said, he really only has like a lot of spare observations to throw out there, not really any kind of a big, profound conclusions. Thankfully, from here, though, the album does pick up thanks to a lot of great lyrical team-ups. There's Run It Back, where Q-Tip takes on a bit of a bigger role vocally, and LL lyrically is kind of bragging on a lot of his past successes, which I feel like serves as a much-needed reminder for those who may have forgotten about them or just not even noticed them at this point. We also get that Black Panther ferocity on Huey in the Chair with Busta Rhymes, where we know Busta is gonna smash it, and flow-wise, he certainly does. LL very much keeps up with him, and the both of them together are providing essentially like this revolutionary Huey P. Newton angle to a lot of their bars. Meanwhile, Praise Him featuring Nas is also a great moment flow-wise, where him and another great go toe-to-toe. There are a lot of religious angles, specifically in relation to Islam, that are explored on this one. And then Murdergram Do with Eminem is probably the biggest instance of lyrical fireworks on the entire record, where Q-Tip provides this just persistent, almost like relentless, driving, bassy groove, very unlikely instrumental, honestly. Like, this beat just does not stop. And flow-wise, Eminem and LL do not stop either. In fact, I would say, like, this is maybe the best collaboration of the bunch, because I think they kind of bring the best out of each other on this one. Like, there's obviously pressure for LL to keep up with a guy who is as technically skilled as Eminem, and Eminem isn't throwing out quite as many awful bars as he has in the past. I mean, it's still an Eminem feature. If you find like his whole vibe and energy, especially at this point in his career, to be just unforgivably cringe, you are most likely not going to get a lot out of this feature. But as somebody who has to listen to pretty much everything he does these days, it does sound like on some level, because it's LL Cool J, he is kind of on his best behavior and isn't being as weird or as obnoxious or as indulgent as he might be in just like a solo context. To finish things off, we have The Vow, where LL kind of delivers like this hilariously exaggerated origin story of himself. You know, he's born and there's lightning and there's a microphone. It's absolutely unhinged and insane. Really could have ended right there, but actually past this point, we get a handful of pretty forgettable features that just don't really add that much to the song, the theme of the song, the record overall. Still, I will say it's a decent closer for an album that overall, while it may not be mind-blowing, it may not be one of the best hip-hop records I've heard this year, it's still pretty good, and definitely more than I expected in terms of quality from somebody who is perceived to be as over the hill as LL Cool J is. And I feel like this record also just like kind of serves as a reminder for how good a late-stage album can be from an artist of LL's profile, when he's in a position and he's in a context where he's basically allowed to do whatever the hell it is he wants. Because yeah, as of right now, that's like literally where LL Cool J is at. There are no commercial pressures for him to make songs that sound a certain way or read a certain way. He's also a total legend and can pretty much work with just about anybody that he feels like most likely, have anybody producing that he wants, obviously. And yeah, when left up totally to his own creative devices, he can put out some pretty cool shit that feels like it has a foot in the old, a foot in the new, and is also something completely weird and unique a little bit too. Which is why I'm feeling a light 7 on this album. Transition, have you given this record a listen? Did you love it? Did you hate it? What would you rate it? You're the best, you're the best. What should I review next? Hit the like if you like. Please subscribe and please don't cry. Hit the bell as well. Over here next to my head is another video you can check out. Hit that up or the link to subscribe to the channel. Anthony Fantano, LL Cool J, forever.